For about 6 months by now, probably even a whole year, I've been having a hard time figuring out just what color do I want to make the waters. However, the first part of this video is actually not involving that. Rather, it's the interesting solution I came up with, thought of probably about a year ago, I think by now, for the waves. Yeah, these waves here. Originally, I was intending on having all the waves line up so it was just one huge long streak of, well, kind of like this effect here where it's all just the same like that. However, I decided I didn't like the random look. I just kind of picked some random numbers using the usual noise map that I have and the color picker to pick colors, and just %32 on that. However, that I did not like the looks of it all. This kind of setup here actually looked the best. However, there's a problem. If you look in the distance here, and if you might recall from my previous videos where I show him getting up really, really high above the lake to the point where you can't almost otherwise, the waves are otherwise off the screen, well, you get this richly detailed texture in the view, right? Right. However, the waves are a huge contrast from this textured part to this. So, what's the solution that I thought of? This. Have the texture extend from here all the way out into the foreground. There is a problem though. Two, in fact. Uh-oh. Problems. Not again. No. Wrong window. Forgot to click it. Okay, in the previous version, in this image up here, you can see how it goes up to here and you got the waves. Here, you got the waves. This right here would actually be about where they'd end. Or at least where that effect begins. But if you look real closely, uh-oh, banding, banding, and even more banding. That's going to be a limitation with 2D, and there's no known solution for doing that outside the system that these clouds use. Yeah, these richly detailed ones that have now got in. However, there's a different problem too. Now, if you look here, it's really rough looking and very fine and richly detailed. Here, it's really smoothed out. It's very pixelated. In fact, even real 3D games do this thing to very effect too. Don't believe it? Try getting the camera as close as you possibly can to pretty much any texture, and the closer you can get the camera to it, the more of this kind of effect you'll actually see. Yep, Platform Masters mimics that quite well. However, I do have some workarounds for resolving this. And you might also be thinking, since the texture is now out into the, extending clear out into the foreground, if you will, much closer, and you might be thinking that the transparency fade effect that happens when you get close to the lake is otherwise going to be gone. Not quite. Actually, that feature will actually be better enhanced. Instead of basing it solely on height, I can now actually base it on distance. Of course, I could have done distance in the previous one, but I rejected that idea, and I just went with the next further out one. But this and this looks a lot better than this, considering quite a bit of the time you're actually going to be really close to the lake anyway. And if you think this effect here, the banding and the such, is pretty bad here, try not Lake Cavern, that's what this place is. Try Cavern Reef, where it's going to be twice as bad. Now, what about the watercolor problem? I'll explain that. This looks a little odd. Like, where's the 3D effects at? For one, that's what I'm trying to get at. This is just basically a simulation. I'll just show you. This is just this layer visible alone. You can see that there's no eyes in there at all. Of course, if you look closely, you can see that it's just, well, transparency there. It's nothing but transparency, if this is any indication. However, the point of this is actually a simulation. I've also got something for rawness as well with, where's the river at? Well, it's basically a simulation of that. And yes, I know this looks rather strange, but it's the river that I'm more focused on rather than this stuff. I did it on this one because, well, I'd like to be able to see the effects on at least one of them. That took a while to do, but hey. After all, this is already a ridiculous revision number 7 that I'm just about to start. However, I still need to figure out the watercolor, which of course I'll cover right now. So what's the problem? I need to make the watercolor not ridiculously blue. Let's see, I'll demonstrate. Okay, not ridiculously blue like this. Well, yeah, this is ridiculously blue. I would not even think that's gonna work at all. Highly, highly unrealistic. This looks so much better than that, does it? However, to explain the basics, this is my layer that I actually fill in to provide the effects, like that, for example. I just bucket fill that. This layer provides the lighting, basically the shadows, and if you want a closer look, yeah, it's nothing more than just a noise map, a random noise map. And this is from the reflections of the sun, because after all, water is kind of reflective in a way, so that enhances the realism, and when all three of them are combined, what do you get? So that's basically what those 3 layers are all for. I just wanted to explain that to you so you understand the basics. So when I want to change the base color, all I got to do is just bucket fill this background layer, and there you have it. Of course, I don't want that color. I don't want it to be ridiculously blue. I also don't want it to be ridiculously bright either, as in, like, for example, the case that I had in this image here. This is too bright. Not too much bright, but it's still too bright. I want it to be darker than the sky here. Just a little bit. I want about the hue and saturation from about this area here, but I also want it to be about as dark as it is here. Clouds aside, of course, because that might throw things off, but it does give you the idea. So, what I'm trying to do is figure out what color do I want. And this is where I'm kind of stuck at right now. I'm trying to figure out how do I want to fine-tune this color. This doesn't look too bad. And why didn't I, a year ago or so, think about using this simulation image in the first place? But anyway, that looks too gray. So, let's see here. Bump this up, then, I guess. Too bright. Okay. So, I'll do that. That's not too bad. But this... not quite. It's a little too gray. Yep. And this is what I've been trying to do for a long time. I've already done revision 6, but I had it too bright. And that was before I thought of this. But now I got this preview image all set and ready to go, so it's actually going to be quite easy to test. So now, of course, I also don't want it to be too dark. Let's see, what if I just change just the blue alone? Not too bad. Get rid of some of the gray, so I'll make this 96. Now the hue is off. Yep, I usually snap to multiples of 8. This appears a little too blue. Of course, track that back down a bit. How do I know how much gray there is? What's saturation? Saturation is the degree of color. So if this is 100, it's that basically a pure hue like this. Of course, if it was 0, that's a different subject. Of course, it'd be nothing more than a shade of gray. But it's just to demonstrate the idea. And yes, I know how to convert between RGB and HSV. It's pretty easy to do. The hue is the hard one though, but saturation and value are real easy. Value is basically nothing more than the high value of these, the highest one, divide that by 255, or 207 divide 55. Should be 81.25 to be exact. Saturation, it's the highest minus the lowest, divide the highest. If I recall, anyway. But hue, that requires using all three of these in hue zone calculations. Yeah, it's really complicated. But either way, it does give the idea. But anyway, I need to figure out what color I want. And this one's not too bad, but it's too dark. And too dark means, well, I'm pretty much otherwise reverting back to what I kind of originally had. And thus, this here looks to be about the best. Of course, I'd also like to test it in various other worlds too, but since I can't directly import this into the game engine to test it that way, well, that's where these simulation screenshots come in to help with. Of course, here the water looks a little too dark, but here it looks about right. Maybe just a tad dark, actually. No, wrong layer. So it's actually pretty close like this. I'm going to make some really fine adjustments, adding 4 on all of them. Say, that's not bad. What hue is that? 223. Yeah, that's about kind of what the sky is. Of course, the saturation went down. What is the sky? About that same area as I covered before. Okay, that's right, and that's right. So 224 and 50 is what I got. And what do I got here? 223.51. I would say that's close enough. Value is different because this is different. Of course, if I made this 216, I'll make it exactly 50 on the saturation. If you know what I mean. But that's not what I want. I want 219. But anyway, let's see, I already did that. Now that I got the base texture, all I need to do is, well, make some final preparations. And just so you know, this is kind of what I was basing on. This is with the stretching and stuff for the scaling up and the such. Here's where the pixelation starts to become noticeable. And here's what you might expect with Cover and Reef. Except Cover and Reef doesn't use the daytime texture. But look how pixelated this is. This is actually about as bad as Cover and Reef was. Or Lake Cover. I keep getting those two mixed up for some reason. But either way, it just demonstrates the idea. Now I just need to form the baseline from this, because here it looks kind of bright in a way. Of course, if I were to play it against the Nadara Ice Shelf, of which I don't actually have processed right now, well, you probably get the idea. But anyway, this video was created by Ulillillia. Thank you for watching.